My name is Meerah, and I'm a Lorekeeper in one of Yogg-Sothoth's libraries, and today I wanted to talk about the Eldritch horror entity known as the Gloom in the 2020 book Mexican Gothic by Sylvia Morena Garcia. I cannot roll my R's very well, and I apologize. As you all know, I am on a quest to read more weird or Lovecraftian or cosmic or eldritch horror books that are written by women, especially women of color or indigenous women. And boy howdy did this book not disappoint. It is quite eldritch and spooky, way more than I was expecting, honestly. This video does have heavy spoilers, so if you want to read it and haven't yet, please go do that. The entity known as the Gloom is a mycelium network, that is to say, a network of a special kind of mushrooms that grants immortality and can store the memories and consciousness of humans that bond with it in its network. It was created with said mushrooms combined with the mind of a very unfortunate human woman named Agnes, whose mind sort of acts as like the core of the network. She was sacrificed specifically for her mind to act as a host or a conduit for the Gloom. The history of the Gloom, as we know it, begins roughly 400 or so years ago when a man known as Doyle discovered a cult that used the mushroom for healing and longevity, with priests even succeeding in transferring ancestral memories through the mushroom. Doyle then killed the priests and took over, essentially, determined to become a god and use the mushrooms to make himself, immortal. Or practically immortal. Once his human body had run its course, he would then transfer his consciousness to the Gloom, and then into a new human body from his bloodline. Howard Doyle had his descendants marry each other to keep their bloodline pure. Yuck. And pass down the bond with the mycelium network so that he always has a host ready to go. It is said that in the late 1800s, he and his family left England and went to Mexico because the British people were starting to realize something was very wrong with him and his family. When in Mexico, he basically enslaved a lot of the indigenous Mexican people to work a silver mine for him and to build his house, High Place, where the story of Mexican Gothic takes place. Who knows how many people this mother has killed over the course of his many lives, but the old white guy was a racist, sexist menace who viewed women as nothing but breeding cattle and other inferior races as mulch. While he gets to live forever, his former first wife Agnes remains trapped in an eternal hell as her consciousness lives on powering the mycelium network. Poor Agnes. The Gloom presents itself as golden spores and mushrooms when it is perceived, and a person can venture into the Gloom in their dreams. This happens to the main character many times, and it's how she meets Ruth, a former member of the fucked-up immortal mushroom incest family, who attempted to actually kill Howard and other members of her family with a gun because she realized what was going on and wanted no part of it. She was nearly successful, but not quite, and Howard was able to take control of her and force her to turn the gun on herself, sadly. So the Gloom also gives Howard the ability to infect and control other humans that are in the vicinity of the Gloom, which is how he managed to enslave the local population to doing his bidding. It's described as carving the minds out of people, leaving them essentially a vacant puppet that he can control. By the time Mexican Gothic takes place, only like 3 or 4 of these poor servants still remain, along with, of course, the immediate Doyle family members, all of whom are heavily infected with the Gloom, and exist solely to serve Howard's will or to exist as a backup body for him. In the end, our main character, Noemi, the legend that she is, throws an oil lamp on the mushroom-riddled mummy of Agnes, thus freeing Agnes from her suffering and causing the fire to spread throughout the entire mycelium network, leaving nothing but ashes of High Place and the very horrible Doyle family. The Gloom, it can be assumed, was destroyed. Francis, the only good white person in the whole book, and also the nephew of Howard, does survive and does suffer some adverse side effects from what I can only describe as mushroom withdrawal, but his fate is ultimately unknown. It's implied that he lives happily ever after with Noemi and her family in Mexico City. At least that is my fervent hope, because the poor guy spent a lifetime enslaved to his creepy, crazy family. His own father was lured in and ended up throwing himself into a ravine to escape the hold that the Gloom and Howard had over him. Yeah, the kid deserves a break. Anyway, that's a brief summary of the Gloom for Mexican Gothic, at least how I understood it. Have you guys read this book? What did you think of it? I also have a review on the book as a whole, but I really wanted to make a video just focusing on the Gloom because it reminded me a lot of Annihilation, and y'all know I love Annihilation. I also love mushrooms, find them fascinating, so this was right up my alley. So yeah, if you liked this video, you know, maybe leave it a like, perhaps a comment, subscribe, maybe, y'all know the drill. Special thank you, as always, to my channel members, especially Loremaster PwNaGeDOTexe. May Yogg grant you all the knowledge you seek, my friends. If you also would like to support the channel, maybe also consider becoming a member. Anyway, thank you again for watching, and I hope to see you all next time here in the library.